Good evening from New York, and welcome to Starcast from Planet Waves. I'm Eric Francis Compolino, your friendly neighborhood astrologer, here with the Starcast accompanying the December 19th horoscope and article. These are timed with the winter solstice, though I don't mention the winter solstice in the article. I talk about a couple of other astrological factors and generally comment on the completely absurd state of the world, which I thought was absurd when I was writing about it 15 years ago, and every week would write something like, wow, it really seems like the world is spinning off of its axis. I guess it's just spinning faster and faster, although we are approaching the winter solstice. I will get to that. I'm going to cover a bunch of things I don't mention in the article. Before I go there, I believe it was on Tuesday that I completed and submitted the Pisces chapter from the Awakening. So that written project is done. By far the most beautiful of the written readings in the annual series. And there came a point a couple of years ago, maybe about 10, 12, 13, I don't know how many years ago, when I changed the format of the annual reading to include only the readings. The reason for this was that, the original vision for the annual edition was a kind of a yearbook, an almanac that presented a diversity of articles from different writers, commenting on issues of the moment, and there were some fantastic ones. However, that was also in a time when everyone did not have a Substack, and where people generally had more time and more inclination to participate. The project would have maybe 10 or 12 contributors, an artist or two or three, and an editor coordinating all of that other copy while I did the readings and generally, guided the thing coming together and the concepts. And that became too much to handle. There just was not the bandwidth. And I think that the creative atmosphere was a little bit more participatory, say going back to 2004, 2005, 2006, where there were some of the very best multi-contributor editions. But this year, I think, returning the annual to a bit of its former glory and doing something that I have never been able to pull together, which is a comprehensive overview of the astrology going ahead for a couple of years, in addition to the sign readings in audio and in writing. I've always wanted to really talk about, cover, develop, independently of any one sign or rising sign, the astrology. And that has happened. I sat down at this desk around September 30th or so, not even 3 months ago, to write an outline. And I ended up basically writing an ebook. It's not that long of an ebook, but it's also not that short. I think it's the book and the readings are just long enough that you can get into them, that you're not just like read it and pass it by, oh, that was nice, but enough to necessitate a second look at parts that are more interesting. And they're on printable format so that you can have it as a physical object. I think this is very important with any art form, and especially with astrology, to be able to make it, part of your life, part of your personal notebook. So going against the trend of the digital era, I'm offering introspection, an interior look at who and what it remains to be human. Speaking of interior, let's talk about the winter solstice, which is upon us. That is going to be at 4:20 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, on December 21st. That means it will be very early in the morning on Saturday. That's less than 48 hours away from now, quite a bit. Basically day and a half away from the moment that I am recording this at a little before 4 o'clock on Thursday. And that is the shortest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere and the longest day of the year in the Southern Hemisphere. The season changes. The sun is making a right angle to the southern tropic, the Tropic of Capricorn. It's hard to think of the Tropic of Capricorn being the southern tropic if you're up here from the Northern Hemisphere when it's always cold when the sun is in Capricorn. In fact, it's first just getting real cold. Not if you live in Florida, but even there it's kind of chilly. But it is true that the southern tropic is the Tropic of Capricorn, and because the Earth is turning on its axis, that means that the sun's rays make direct angles to the tropics and the equator at different times. And so what we have now is the sun's rays making the most direct 90-degree angle to the Tropic of Capricorn. Hence, it is warm in the southern hemisphere, and the days are at their longest, where it is getting cold up here in the northern hemisphere, and the days are at their shortest. This, by the way, is the beautiful elegance of the way that basic geography and geophysics works. I mean, if you understand it, let's say to know it is to love it, and it rewards you for taking an interest in it. And for now, I'm the one taking that interest. So I will tell you a little bit about this winter solstice chart, which has the sun in the first degree of Capricorn. That's how you know that it's making a square to the Tropic of Capricorn, because the sun enters the sign Capricorn. How about that for a huge coincidence? And in so doing, the sun is therefore going to make a series of conjunctions to planets that are in early Capricorn. I have been talking about this pretty much every week since I kind of put it all together back in June. And I'm describing this group of planets in Capricorn as the Family Hunger Game Cluster. And so the sun will be making conjunctions to Ixion, that's a Pluto-like body, as well as Quaoar or Quaoar, depending on how you want to pronounce it, the Centaur, Pholus, the asteroid Pallas Athene, and the special point Cupido, all in approximately the next 10 to 12 days. So it's a very active early stage. The sun is still in late Sagittarius. Earlier this week, it was conjunct the galactic center. In truth, it is very close to the galactic center when it's in early Capricorn, though the galactic center is at about 27 and change of Sagittarius. It's very close to the solstice point. But we're leaving that dominant energy behind. And now we get to this point where it really feels like the starry dynamo of the heavens stops and reverses itself and turns around. And so it is not solstice for long, but the word means the sun staying in the same place. So if you were studying the movement of the sun along the horizon, it would have completed its southerly motion, and it would seem to be hanging out for a day or two at its southernmost point on the local horizon, wherever you are in the world. And then it turns around. And I have had one experience of feeling this happen. Sometimes when I'm very quiet and I tune in, I can have a physical experience of these celestial events. I mean, that may be part of why I can actually read astrology. And it was just like it felt as if like a machine had stopped and then just started going in the other direction. It was quite dramatic. I believe I was on a ferry boat line waiting to get off of Vashon Island, or disembarking the ferry to get back onto the island or something like that. So there was a lot of water around, kind of making itself into an antenna, a dish, as it were. All right, so the sun is going to move through this family Hunger Games pattern right during the holidays. Now, this is, it's been happening for some years because the pattern moves very slowly through the through the heavens, because these points are, particularly Pholus, Quaoar, and others, they're not, they're moving only a couple of degrees a year, maybe total. So earlier on, it was more concentrated around Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, and now it's a little bit after that, but still the energy is there, the aspects are applying. And the sad truth is that while, we want to have this kind of Norman Rockwell view of what a family is, and it often works out that our family situation is rather tense, and there is a tremendous amount of unhealed karma in families. The wounds are not only left open, they're often festering, and you might be sitting at the table with people who were mean to you, or in some way betrayed you, or don't recognize your humanity, and maybe it's not. Maybe in your family it's not that bad. Maybe in your family people get along and they've worked out their differences and all of that. But when I look around at the world and I see, for example, what is being acted out in the political realm and in the realm of sexual politics, to me, it just seems like people are dragging around their mommy and daddy wounding, it would seem, to no end, and projecting this out into the world and into their partnerships, and that there's not enough therapy or the willingness to go to therapy or therapists who even know how to handle this to be able to make any real progress. And so what we get is people kind of carrying around suitcases of unresolved material, and this is very unpleasant. It consumes creativity, just eats creativity alive. It eats trust and goodwill, and it is a source of often ongoing disappointments. And then, of course, there are all the people who wish they could be with families, but are not with families, or even with friends. And there are a great many people for whom the world has become a very lonely place. As people age, their friends move away, their friends die, and it's very hard to make new friends when you are older, because after all, why should a young person take any interest in an old person, except, imagining they're sitting on a bench along Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn, and they're going to hear what it was like back in Russia, before the war, or whatever it may be. And so there are a lot of lonely people. Paul McCartney in the 1960s asked, where do they all come from? Well, they come from a society that doesn't really have community. And they are the product of a society that has no inherent respect for its elders. A society where there is not really a concept of wisdom. Someone who is himself a wise elder, Robert Bly, described American society in particular as the sibling society. It's just a bunch of kids left home alone, and you end up with some cross between The Catcher in the Rye and Lord of the Flies. And this is what we're what we're seeing now, tremendous alienation and cynicism, made the worse by the fact that people are just completely kind of hung up on digital technology. That said, there are quite a few people for whom digital technology is all they have, and that is at least a positive thing, and it's part of why I make so many of my podcasts and all the radio programs and most of the podcasts available without having to be a subscriber. There are a lot of lonely people who have no concept to whom to reach out, how to reach out, what they would even say. And so there you go. That is in the spirit of St. Francis. So let's go on reading this chart. There's a lot clustered around, 6 to 8 degrees of the cardinal signs. That's particularly involving, all the cardinal signs. That would be Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. That's where the action is at the moment, for the most part. There's an exception, but that's where it is, a couple of exceptions that I cover in my article. That's where the action is as far as the solar, the progress of the sun in its course around the solar system, or the Earth around the sun. Okay, so what also is going on is that there is activity concentrated early in the sign Cancer. There's a conjunction there with two of the slow movers. One is called Asbolus. That's a centaur about survival, and that's a Chiron-like body. And another is called Chaos. That is in a 300-year orbit. And I don't mean to confuse you with these, and I can keep them all straight. I wrote most of the Awakening without using any charts. I made the charts up later. I just kind of went. I already had the charts imprinted in my consciousness, and then I had to sit down and write all my notes out how I did this. So this fits the theme. Asbolus brings in a survival theme. We don't need to go to chaos, except to say that there is creative potential when things get churned up. And Asbolus is about the techniques and the tactics that we use to survive as children. And so we are often thrust into the submissive and completely diminished authority role of children when we get around relatives, because all of those limbic pathways can be reactivated by those people who we thought we try to leave behind, and then then we find out that they can still be a source of drama, and it doesn't help if none of them have done very much of the way of growth work themselves. It really, for a relationship to mature and to grow, all the parties in the relationship need to be maturing and growing. And sadly, I have found that this is really not something that we can expect from other people, much less count on from other people. So anyway, we've got this concentration of energy in early Capricorn, early Capricorn, and in early Cancer. But there's also something going on in Aries. And what's going on in Aries is this point I've been developing all year called Salaa. I wonder if this made it onto my it did make it onto my list of points that I developed in the Awakening. I went deeper into a bunch of these minor planets in the Awakening, scattered throughout the signs. But I wanted to develop delineations for certain things that I hadn't written down before. A lot of that takes place in the Libra reading. But what's going on in Aries is this point called Salaa. And my interpretation of Salaa is that it is about sexuality. Its name does not mean salacious, but rather salty. And it's named for a nymph who was the consort of Neptune. And to my, let's say, delineation mind, having worked on this point for some years, Salaa is the sex that is appropriate for you. Now, that is a big statement because most people never find out about the sex that is appropriate for them. But let's just imagine that everyone has something that is appropriate to them. Everyone's got a little something or a lot of something, but most people have not done much exploring of it. Some people have tuned into it. Some are organically close to it. And because Salaa is in a 90-degree angle to all of this family baggage in early Capricorn, there is likely to be provocation in the air. Now, we live with this in a more or less constant state, and we're pounded by it in the news every day with constant reporting on sexual politics and sex crimes and all of this stuff, and nobody's got a good word to say. No one's encouraging. You're allowed to identify as something, but we don't want to know what you really do. You can pick one of the letters up on the sign and identify as that, and you can pick some pronouns, but in reality, what does that really mean? Well, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about anything positive about sex. You are only allowed to talk about violation and trauma and scandal and all of this. Salaa is not about any of that stuff. Salaa goes in the opposite direction of all this violation, trauma, scandal stuff into what is your natural, organic state of being. I should have added sin to violation, trauma, and all that. That's all generally in the realm of sin, right? We're clobbered with this stuff from the time that how old are kids when they receive First Communion? What are they, like 4 or 7 or 5 or something? They're going to confession at that age and being conditioned to being guilty. And of course the ultimate sin is always a sexual sin of some kind. I threw food out. Like what are you going to tell the priest? I made 2 slices of toast and I only ate one of them. Well, who fucking cares? You can't make money on that. I mean, the bread company can, but that's it. So what I am suggesting here is that underneath a lot of this family baggage is some truth about your sexuality that you want to express and that you want to be perfectly comfortable within, whatever that is. Whatever it is. You may like to masturbate out on the balcony. You may like to have sex with your boyfriend and his best friend. You may like to play with one of your girlfriends who nobody would ever suspect was kind of a part-time lover. There's 100 possibilities. Endless. As many as there are people, there are possibilities. But where is the appropriate place to even consider those things, much less to explore them? Much less to seek a true understanding of oneself and where you stand. And so I don't know what your situation is vis-a-vis your family. I don't know. I do know that there are not a lot of enlightened families when it comes to anything, especially sex, death, and money. So be aware. And I would say more than being aware of you have one of the famous planet waves trigger warnings, alcohol warnings, by the way, with the sun conjunct Pholus and Pholus square Salaa and all that. If you're going to drink, stay at home. Don't go anywhere. Be where you have control over your environment rather than in a place where you don't have control and you have to get home. That's neither here nor there. I mean, we could have a very interesting forum on the responsible use of consciousness-altering substances, planet wave style. I'm no teetotaler, but I'm cautious where I allow my energy to open up, and I like to have all of my interactions with Mr. Policeman ending with him saying, "Thank you, sir." So be cool with that. So meanwhile, underneath all of this drama and what we always talk about as trauma, because we can't talk about anything else, right? All you can talk about is sin, violation, trauma, scandal, absence, breakups, and grief, and all of this stuff. And then every now and then someone gets married, and everyone's happy. And they're like, ooh, they're going to fuck. And that's it. That's as good as it gets. Remember that under all of that stuff about you is something that you want. There's something positive, by which I mean expressive, creative, loving, potentially fulfilling. And I am here to tell you, this is the bottom line message of all of my many hundreds of discussions and hundreds of articles about sexuality, is that you have a birthright to who you are, actually who you are. And part of that birthright involves the right and the privilege of being able to find out and figure out, to ascertain who you are. So don't let all the bullshit stop you. Don't let yourself get snowed under. Don't let yourself get so triggered. And look, you don't have to go where you don't want to be. And I realize that, families are often, people are pulled and you might have to go to the in-laws. And you don't want to go to the in-laws because your partner is expected. And all of this, well, there's a reason I'm not married, and that's one of them. So look for your options. See that you have some, rather than assuming that you don't have any and that everything you do is basically a foregone conclusion, where you don't have any freedom of choice and you don't have any power. That was the 9-year-old version of you. Mars retrograde is saying that we all have a lot of work to do in contemplating and determining what it is that we want. That is Mars retrograde. It is a review on the level of desire. And with Mars retrograde approaching its second opposition to Pluto, now in Aquarius, this is the first ever Mars retrograde opposite newly born Pluto in Aquarius, and this kind of opposition only happens twice per century. Mars is opposite Pluto every 2 years, but it's only opposite Pluto in retrograde motion twice per century, and we're having one right now. As part of the gala grand send-off of Pluto into Aquarius till 2043-44, this can turn desire into a power struggle. And, one of my favorite Bono lines is, I gotta go, I'm running out of change, there's a lot of things, if I could, I would rearrange. I wish the world didn't have to be like this. I personally want people to be a lot happier than most people think they're entitled to being. And this is not the kind of happiness that costs money or requires 3 houses or, a Grammy Award or something like this. By happy, I mean the ability to breathe and live and express yourself and to share what is true for you with people to whom it matters, and for the happiness of others, the genuine, sincere contentment and peace of mind of others to really matter to you. There is something special in that. There is something special when you genuinely experience pleasure and a sense of freedom when the people around you feel good and they have the lives that they want. It does not have to be a seesaw. It does not have to be a power struggle. You should not have to negotiate for an hour to play your musical instrument, for example. All right. Thanks for joining me for this half hour. I'm going to be sitting here doing quite a bit of audio over the next week and a half or so. I'm looking to have these readings in your hands by the end of the year. I will probably have a couple of special editions of Starcast or Planet Waves FM, and I am planning the next full edition right at the time of the new moon in Pholus, a little bit before that. So about, a little more than a week from now, coming out right around the same time as the Awakening audio readings are completed, and we're able to release this whole package to you. It's been great fun doing this. I have put quite a few hours of work, and got past the stage where I was surviving with Hennepin's brand Tiger Balm with CBD, made by a friend of mine who started basically a hemp company. And about halfway through, I was having to wrap my wrists in kind of ace bandages at night, and working out the whole time with those Chinese medicine balls. Anyway, got that behind me, on to the bigger, bold adventure of the audio readings. Thanks again for tuning in. Safe and sane and happy holidays. If you really need to, drop me a note. If I see it, I will reply. Lots of love, and bye for now.